Hey, morning, guys. Troy Dooley here. Hey, we've all gone through, I would say, it's been last 13, 14 days, last 2 weeks has been a very enlightening moment for some, polarizing for others. Some feel like it's divisive, and then some probably feel like there's some unity that has come into play. And I'm gonna share a confession, I guess. Before having some Marine brothers send me raw footage prior to Charlie Kirk going viral the day that he was assassinated, executed, depends on how you look at it. Others just say he died, but however you want to look at it, from that moment moving forward, I learned who Charlie Kirk was. Before then, I'd seen him on TV shows. I had seen snippets come across, but I wasn't a follower of Charlie Kirk. And I think probably that may have had to do that the focus of Turning Point was on college age individuals. They were focused on that versus what I focus on. And being the father of kids that range from 42 to 9, I very quickly learned who Charlie Kirk was. So between his assassination and the celebration of life that was on Sunday, I had plenty of time to familiarize myself with Charlie Kirk, what he stood for, what Turning Point stood for. I was able to listen to quite a few small snippets of Erica Kirk, who I believe she's an amazing individual. From prior and even now, you can see she's very grounded on who she is, what she believes, what she sees herself in, the different roles that she has been given in life, from mom to wife to business partner, etc. But what I've observed as I watched a lot of hours, a lot of snippets of Charlie Kirk, was that I agreed with some things that he said, and there were some things that I probably would have, if I was an advisor of his, said, "Hey, let's reword this a little bit. That's more divisive than it needs to be. Let's try to be more inclusive. Let's get these conversations started, but let's not alienate people." And look, we all know in the real world there are some people that they just don't want unity in any way whatsoever. But I watched the celebration of life. I had shot a video on Friday talking about what unites us in America, what's our common values. And then I watched that 6 hours or so of the coverage, flipping through different stations to get different perspectives. And as I watched each individual speak, what I saw was once again a validation to some articles and research that we've been doing, and really it's piggybacking off of the research that is done by some very smart individuals that are in politics and education, they're in economics, they're in religion, because we wanted to be able to try to show something that I think is it really, through my world lens, I saw it play out in real life during this celebration of life. And what it comes down to is we saw some people who spoke, who I believe spoke from what we would define as a as a separatist or a scarcity worldview. And one of those was Stephen Miller. Now, Stephen Miller he's a deputy chief of staff. He kind of oversees the I don't know what you want it, Homeland Security side of things. So I don't know if that includes the Department of War or what. But he used this time, and I'm sure him and Mr. Kirk were somehow they were connected, maybe just via POTUS's Trump relationship with him. But I watched him get up there, and he literally played into what we would call that separatist worldview, that these are our enemies. We're coming after our enemies. We're not going to back down from our enemies. His whole speech at a celebration of life where he should have been respectful to what is it that best reflects the family, what is it that best reflects Turning Point. He was very, very separate. He was definitely, and to his credit, he didn't try to placate any religious side whatsoever. He was just dead on, flat up. This is my stances. You could see his beliefs were strong. I give him credit on that. I think it was inappropriate. That's my opinion. But I also saw division. I saw so many different little snippets, sound bites. Being in communications and marketing, you look for this, and it's like, man, this is going to be used against your side, as we would say it. And I was blown away by that. But that triggered something for me to be paying attention to okay, where are all these speakers going to line up? And some of them, I think, probably had been given their speeches. They'd been given some Bible verses. They weren't familiar with those verses, but you could tell that they were trying to be respectful. They were trying to probably hold a partisan line. It wasn't about patriotism with them. They were there. They were there for a purpose. But then there were the other worldview. And listen, when you read our articles that are coming out, you'll see the first one that we put out already, but you'll see more of these because it all comes down to two worldviews. You either have this separatist or scarcity mindset. It's called different things, whether it's in economics or religion or whatever. And then you have the connected or the abundant worldview, meaning that there's enough for all. And you find the connection in between. Okay. And as I watched some of these speakers really try to bring unity, what I would call that. Look, we're going to find a common ground that we can work with, and the one that did it the best was Erica. I think her whole message was from a connected world view. It was from a forgiveness. It was not a matter of these are my enemies. It was the one individual in which I think most humans, but definitely most Americans, and probably the majority of wives would say you have a right to hate that person. That person just took your husband, took your father, took your lover, took your best friend. And she, because of her faith, there's a lot of talk lately about politics and religion. And look, I'm a firm believer they need to be separated, but yet they also have a unique connection, if you will, in most countries, not just in America. This is how wars are created. This is how factions take power. There's a lot of that in there. But what she did was she looked at her personal relationship she had with Jesus Christ. And she held that as her line, not just words in a Bible, not just something a pastor had said, but you could tell the struggle and the angst that she was having. And she took it back to Jesus on the cross. And I think that's important because from that point forward, she said, I forgive this young man. Now, her battle's just started because eventually those babies are going to grow up and they're going to ask questions, and she's going to have to guide them in a way to be in a connected worldview, to be able to realize that, honey, if you hold bitterness and you hold unforgiveness towards anyone, that's going to hurt you, but it's also going to cause division. So as I came out of that and I saw the different people and I saw the different messages, and even, I should say, even POTUS Trump, I think this may be one of the first times we saw some vulnerableness in him, because he would say something that was divisive, something that would be classified one-sided, classified of we're coming after you, kind of like Stephen Miller. But then he would pause and he'd say, Charlie used to get on to me on that. Erica, you need to keep working on me on this. And I thought that was very enlightening to to show that even he realizes some of his rhetoric, as much as he wants to claim unity, some of his rhetoric is divisive. And some of you watching this live will wonder, where does Troy stand? I grew up most of my life in a scarcity mindset. It was me against them. It was you against us. In America, that seems to be the natural thing. Going into the military, it was that way. Growing up in an outlaw family, it was us against the authorities. And it has taken decades, a lot of research, a lot of soul searching, growing my personal relationship with Jesus Christ and becoming a believer and a follower. I had somebody this week say, well, what kind of Christian are you? And it's like, I don't really know how to put that into play these days, because there's over 60,000 different answers just in the Protestant faith. That's how many denominations there are, maybe more starting every day. But what stays true for me, and it's what I saw with Erica, and it's the underbelly of what I saw in everything that I was watching with Charlie Kirk, was a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. It was this realization that, hey, if I'm going to live my life, I need to walk in the rule of life that he was living, and do my darndest to practice the daily, what I would call rituals that Jesus had, from solitude to prayer to some times of fasting to times of being with community and hanging out. These are the small details. And there may be some theologians that watch this, or some people that are smarter than I am about the Christians of life. But I think that whether it's politics, religion, education, business, I think what we've done is we've created this default, if you will, where we keep going back to a us against them. But yet we don't have the strength, I think, sometimes. It may go deeper than that, but it's a fear somehow driven that we don't want to call out people. So what we do is we say it's government, or we say it's big business, or we say it's the pharmaceutical industry, or it's social media. We don't want to take responsibility for ourselves and say, okay, we need to draw the line in the sand. We need to stop being people pleasers and figure out how we can share what we believe in a way that will meet somebody in the middle. John Maxwell, one of my early mentors, and someone that I've spent a lot of time with his crew and him and stuff. And he has this saying that he says, I live by the 101% rule. And I didn't understand it until I started looking into worldviews. And John says, I find the 1% in an individual that I can agree with, and I give that 100% of my effort. Because when we can find a common ground, something that we all agree with, then we get to start dialogue, trust-inspired, purpose-driven dialogue, where now we can walk down a path and say, well, if these are our common values, if these are our common core, if this is what we believe in, and don't mistake common core as education, I'm using that though here. What it means is that now we have something that we can agree on. Now, how do we reach that destination in a way that both sides feel like they're coming together? This is what the word moderate means. This is where in politics you hear them say crossing the aisle. Well, I think it needs to be in everything. If conservatives get upset because liberals are making lists of conservatives, then conservatives shouldn't make lists on liberals. You should come together. If you believe that church and state doesn't mean that a pastor can't speak about politics on stage, then that's awesome. But if you believe a pastor should never talk about politics, then that's a conversation that should be held together. Because in today's world, it's hard not to talk about any of the major topics, to come down and have an opinion. But I do not believe that we need to be polarized against each other. I think that this experiment that we call the United States, that's moving into its 250th year, I think we, the people, have been given a wake-up call. And it's a call to say, what do I have in common with my neighbor? If Jesus taught, love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself, if you're having a hard time loving your neighbor, maybe you're having a hard time loving you. If Jesus says, love your enemies, then maybe you need to realize, hey, what caused me to have my enemies in the first place? Maybe I can get back to something. We are always going to disagree. So don't mistake this as we're going to live in a utopia. The question is, how do we approach the disagreements? How do we come together? Remember, it took 10 years, a decade, for the Constitution to get signed. Those men kept coming back and forth together, trying to figure out what is the compromise so this works for all of us, that it's in the best. And it wasn't perfect. It was screwed up as all get out when you look at it from a equality standpoint of we're all created equal. But we, the people, over 250 years, have figured out a way to get a little bit closer together. So as I end this live, because everybody's got to get to work, I want us to think about this for a minute. We can either use Charlie Kirk's moment in history as a way to dig our feet in like Stephen Miller did, or we can use it as a time of healing and forgiveness, open dialogue, open communication, like Erica Kirk is doing. Think this through. Don't look at things people say from just your worldview. Stop for a second. Listen. Go find the whole dialogue. Go find more stuff to find out, and then say, what is it that I can agree on? And give that 100% of your effort. Never forgetting that, hey, we do need to talk about what divides us, but let's start getting this straight. If you want true friendship, if you want truly to change, then start at home. Start building these conversations in the home. It was so fun for me as I close this out on Sunday to text Jetty, my 22-year-old, and say, son, I don't get all of this. I don't understand why there's so much attention given to this Charlie Kirk, and I see so much other that was missed. I see kids that were shot in Colorado that's missed. We didn't give this much credit to the young lady whose throat was sliced in North Carolina. What is this? And he said, Dad, this was for those that I run with. He goes, this was kind of like our Martin Luther King moment, really. I said, okay, I get that. Then I talked to another friend of mine that's the same age as Jetty, but he's more of a liberal side, and he saw this completely different. So it gave me two views to look at, to realize this kind of is that same moment in time. It's that time when Martin Luther King and Malcolm X were both executed for what they stood for and what they believed in, and what came out of that. And I think that's what we've got to look at today, is whether we liked Charlie Kirk or we didn't like Charlie Kirk. What we need to be able to do is say, what can I do to bring unity to the people in my sphere, my world? Find common ground for those that I know disagree with me in politics, religion, economics, business, but find a common ground to say we are Americans. We love this country. We want a better place for our families. We want to be able to leave it better than we came into it. Those are the things that bring us together. So let's go out there today and try to figure that out. Y'all, listen, stay strong, stay focused. We'll see you on the next live.